In this video, you're gonna learn how to produce First Class by Jack Harlow. Here's a preview. Hey, I'm Thales, pop music producer, and for some reason, when I listen to First Class, it makes me want to go to the mall and shop. It's weird. Anyway, I remade this instrumental using mostly stock effects from Ableton Live so everyone can follow along easily. I believe the only thing we're missing are the vocals because I did not include the samples by Fergie and of course the rap by Jack Harlow. Let's go ahead and take a look at the individual instruments. I feel like we should start with the drums. This groove is what drives the whole song in my opinion. So first, in the chorus, we have this pattern that we could turn into a 2-bar loop. This loop's made of 9 elements. The kick, and I'm using this frequency shifter just to fine tune it to the song's key, and an equalizer to make this random kick sample sound a bit cleaner and smoother. There's also this clap, which I'm equalizing, gating to make it short and punchy, like the one from the original song, and also distorting with this dynamic tube. I'm using this transient master to increase the attack, but if you don't have a transient design plugin, you could achieve the same result with a compressor using a high attack setting to let the transient pass unaffected. Maybe 30 milliseconds attack, but it depends on your compressor. The snare sometimes hits together with the clap and sometimes by itself during some drum fills. I've heavily equalized the snare sample to give it more body, and it's usually better to invest more time finding samples that sound good from the get-go, but this time I just picked the third snare sample I've tried and went with it. And before every kick and clap hit, I placed this reverse snare sample, and the purpose is to build a very quick and smooth anticipation. It's pretty quiet in the mix, but it adds to the groove. Then I picked a bunch of high frequency samples to use as hi-hats. There's 2 different kinds of closed hi-hats, 1 open hi-hat and 2 tambourine samples. 5 sounds in total, so we can have enough variation in the groove. That way it doesn't become too repetitive. Before we move on to the next section of the chorus, there's this percussion fill to help transition. I'm using an auto pan in sync with the BPM, so there's 1 bit on the left side of the stereo, the next one is on the right side, then back to the left side. In the next section of the chorus, we're going to introduce an 808. The pattern here is a bit different. I picked some 808 sample that came with Ableton and I actually used volume automation to shape the decay of the notes. I find it better that way. It gives me total control how fast the sound decays no matter what notes played. They're also being distorted, low passed, limited, and sidechained to the second kick sample that I'm triggering every time the 808 hits to reinforce that initial thump. So 2 layers. Here's some extra percussion hits. And that's basically the drum section. These 2 patterns are repeated over and over except for the first bar of the verses, which has no drums, and the second verse that has no kick, but the hi-hats and claps continue playing. Next, we have the basses, 4 different bass sounds. The sub bass is like a pad, it plays some long sustained notes. I made it with Wavetable, this great synthesizer that comes with Ableton Live, and it's only a sine wave. And the pattern is very basic. Sometimes it plays a D sharp, sometimes it plays G. It's sidechained to the kick, and I'm also using volume automation to shape the envelope of each note differently. You're only gonna hear this if you have good headphones or speakers. The second bass sound is only used a few times during the song. It goes up the scale to help transition from the choruses back to verses. This patch is a preset of the electric, another stock instrument, and it's called Basic Electric Drive Bass. I'm cutting the sub frequencies because this thing plays at the same time as the 808s. It's actually sidechained to the 808 to avoid masking. Next, there's this glide bass that just plays around sometimes. I used this Wavetable preset called Bass Car and messed with the duration of the glide. And the last bass only plays during the second verse. It's the bass car preset again, but there's no more sustain. It decays faster. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Alright, here's the piano. I use the stock preset called Grand Piano. It's a bit distorted and it plays a few different patterns. This is the chorus and first verse pattern. Here's the transition back to the verses. Here's the second verse pattern. I'm using an auto filter to create movement. Then it goes down the scale. Another instrument that's super important in this song is this pad that plays in the intro and throughout the rest of the arrangement, sitting way in the background. I picked a wavetable preset called Rusty Old Chord, made some equalization, and used an auto filter to create this wobbly effect, mostly messing with the LFO amount and phase. It only plays two chords, D sharp and G minor. It's like a bass too. It plays low frequencies except for the subs, so it doesn't clash with any of the basses I've already shown you. Next, there's this synthesizer sound that transitions from verse to chorus. I actually used an organ sound, also a stock preset. Then I distorted and added some modulated reverb with the Valhalla Vintage Verb. This one is a third party, but it's only 50 bucks. There's also some auto panning going on here to move this thing around the stereo field. There's an ego sample in the first verse, kind of matches the lyrics. And here's the brass on the second half of the choruses. It's another stock preset called Short Staccatissimo. Now, in the end of the song, there's this crazy synthesizer sound, and to replicate that, there are many ways we could approach it. I used this preset called Drunken Flutters, bent past the mid-range, and played it like a harp. It sounds really dreamy, and since Wavetable only allows 8 voices at a time, I used 2 instances. Here's the pattern. On a return track, I'm using Valhalla Vintage Verb again, ambience preset, so every element runs through this return track and it places all of them in the same space. On the master track, the only processing was done with the ozone maximizer to make it louder, and these are the settings that worked for this track. And here's the full instrumental. Make sure to stay until the end because there's going to be a link to the video where I show you how to produce the song as it was by Harry Styles.